This is a story of a rookie self unleashing in the antagonistic camp, repeatedly jumping horizontally on the brink of death, and disrupting the eternal world. Keywords of the novel. No pop-up window for the First Crow in the Wilderness. Download the complete TXT collection of The First Crow in the Wilderness, and read the latest chapters of The First Crow in the Wilderness. Chapter 1. Wedge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Wedge. At the moment when Pangu fell, the flood and famine shook, and terrifying cracks appeared in the heavens and earth. The chaotic tide outside the region counterattacked, and the heavens and earth seemed to have a tendency to return to chaos. It wasn't until Pangu pulled out his spine and turned into a weakness that heaven and earth were able to stabilize. As Pangu exhaled his last breath, his entire body underwent tremendous changes. His exhaled breath turned into free winds and floating clouds, his voice turned into rumbling thunder rolling across the sky, his left eye turned into the sun, his right eye turned into the moon, his beard and hair turned into the stars around him, his hands and feet turned into the four poles of heaven and earth, and his body's orifices turned into blessed places, thousands of innate spiritual lights, either towards the east, west, south, north, sky, earth, bright moon, stars, great sun, 9 heavens, or 9 seclusions, choose their path to enter and invest in one after another, inheriting the legacy of Pangu. When a whale falls, all things come to life. This is the last gift from Pangu. It is also the destination of Pangu Avenue. Gold 11 new book, seeking collection and subscription. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Awakening from Dreams. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Awakening from Dreams. Wu Tian had a dream, one he couldn't wake up from no matter what. The dream was long and strange. In his dream, he was swallowed by a crack, and behind the crack was a world that could solidify one's consciousness. The sun and moon shine together, the stars are billions, and spiritual light flies by. Brilliant and beautiful. He only glanced and was covered by Xian Huang's gaze. Then, it seemed like he was hit by something. Was hit and flew out. Then, he was sucked into boundless darkness. His consciousness still couldn't move, as if he was trapped in a thicker black mud, powerless to struggle. He waited anxiously, waiting for dawn and waking up from a dream. But this dream seems to devour all the light. He waited for a long time but didn't see dawn. Slowly, his consciousness became blurred and chaotic. He forgot what he was waiting for, and also forgot that it was a dream. He fell into deep sleep. In his ignorance, he underwent some kind of change. The blue wind and black mist are condensing and merging. This seems to be another dream. Until a massive amount of information exploded in consciousness. Awakened from the dream, all the dreams woke up. Pangu. A flood and famine. Wu Tian fell silent, digesting the sudden and overwhelming information in his silence. Finally, his consciousness stopped at the spirit light of the wind, collided with him, and merged with him was a bit of innate wind spirit light generated at the beginning of the opening of heaven and earth. The reason why I was able to collide with him is because of the profound merits of heaven and earth. He was imbued with the divine merit of Pangu in creating heaven and earth, which led to this creation. As for why he traveled here, he couldn't find the answer. Perhaps it was the chaos of time and space, or maybe it was the dislocation of heaven and earth. He cannot delve deeper into this. Of course, now is not the time to pursue this matter. The urgent task is to figure out where he is now and in what state he exists. Out of sight, he curled up in the dark yellow like an egg. Dark yellow egg yolk, sky blue egg white, black eggshell. He is heavily constrained and also protected. Everything proves that he is still powerless to go out. Wu Tian began to develop patience and absorb energy from the yolk, egg white, and outside the eggshell. Strengthen oneself. His thoughts are actually very simple, because he is still just a minor, and before crossing over, he was only a 16 or 17-year-old student. Enduring loneliness, enjoying liveliness, sometimes solitary, sometimes cheerful, very contradictory, but it's all him, the real him. Immersed in the most primitive cultivation, Wu Tian didn't feel lonely either. Besides being a bit uncomfortable at first, because there is no phone or computer. But habits are just a matter of time, and over time, habits become. After all, there is no homework either. Relax both physically and mentally, without any pressure. In the stillness of space and meaningless time, I don't know how long has passed. Wu Tianhu suddenly opened his eyes. Who? The awareness of invasion paused. A cold snort reached Wu Tian's heart. Consciousness retreated. Who is outside? Wu Tian asked after me. No one answered. After waiting for a long time, Wu Tian didn't receive a reply. With a nervous heart, Wu Tian threw himself into a new round of cultivation. This time, he felt a sense of urgency. While intensifying his cultivation, he did not let down his guard. This time, it seems that time passes extremely slowly. This stems from his deep sense of urgency. Time passes by bit by bit. Wu Tian is growing stronger bit by bit. Including consciousness and soul. His body is taking shape, accompanied by thinning egg whites and decreasing yolks. After he had absorbed both the egg white and yolk, he touched the eggshell, which was a bit hard and black. Dudu. Dudu. After realizing that he was pecking at the eggshell with his mouth, Wu Tianji was about to collapse. Birds. He turned into a bird. Is there a bird first or an egg first? Wu Tian got the answer, but he was not happy at all. Quickly, Wu Tian adjusted his mindset and said, this is a wasteland, everything is possible. Don't panic. Dong Huang Tai also started with birds, and birds can at least fly. Wu Tian comforted himself so much. He scratched with his claws and pecked with his mouth. Hard work pays off to those who have a heart. Crack the egg has cracked. Wu Tian keeps working hard. The outside world is still pitch black. The pitch darkness made him inexplicably feel at ease. Wu Tian drilled out the eggshell. Given the knowledge of his past life, Wu Tianxian turned around and ate the eggshell clean. I heard this thing is a big supplement. Sure enough, Wu Tian belched heavily and began flapping his wings. He easily flew up. Based solely on this, he is not an ordinary bird. Wu Tian is in a good mood. I also gladly accepted the 2 extra wings that were inexplicably added. As for the absence of 2 hands, this will be temporarily ignored. The feeling of being a bird for the first time was very novel. Wu Tianyue flew higher and higher, and even snorted, I'm a little bird, but no matter how high I fly. He didn't know that there was a pair of eyes staring at him behind the darkness. Wu Tian flew for a long time, but did not fly out of the darkness. Helplessly turning around, he saw a pair of eyes and let out a scream. He forgot to flap his wings and fell straight into the sky. Turning to his senses, he let out a scream and quickly flapped his wings to avoid an air crash. Endless darkness receded like a tide, sucked into a black lotus flower the size of 100 zhang. Wu Tian finally realized that he had always been in this world of lotus flowers. And his original position, or rather the place where he broke out of his shell, was missing a lotus seed, a black lotus seed. Turns out the eggshell is a lotus seed. So, he's not completely laid. In the divine realm of Wu Tian Huang, the lotus flower shrank and fell into one hand. The darkness dissipated, and a majestic man appeared in the sky and earth, with long hair like a waterfall, a black robe like a waterfall, and a mountain like mountain. The man has fair skin like jade, sword eyebrows, cold eyes, thin lips, and a straight nose, filled with a masculine aura that overturns heaven and earth. Dangerous, domineering, terrifying. This is Wu Tian's most direct feeling. Wu Tian struggled to swallow his saliva, and under the man's gaze, he gritted his scalp and shouted, "Big brother." Upon hearing this call, the man's eyebrows moved, seeming somewhat surprised. However, soon the man fell into silence again. He seems to be considering how to deal with Wu Tian. A crisis arose in Wu Tian's heart, and without hesitation, he spoke up, "Thank you, big brother, for taking care of me these years." Taking care of it. The man raised his eyebrows and spoke with a playful tone. Wu Tian hurriedly nodded and said, "If it weren't for the protection of my elder brother, could my younger brother have been born safely? Let's just say two things." At this moment, Wu Tian's mind was spinning extremely fast, everything was approaching the man. To put it simply, it is the tradition of seeking kinship. The man did not refute, but there were no other expressions. Wu Tian continued, "Little brother Wu Tian, may I know your surname, big brother?" The man looked at Wu Tian without saying a word. When Wu Tian thought he wouldn't answer, his lips lifted lightly and he uttered two words lightly. "Luo Ting." Wu Tian's ears roared, his scalp tingled, like thunder piercing through his ears. It was truly like thunder piercing through his ears. "Do you know me?" Luo Ting's enchanting voice reached Wu Tian. Wu Tian was startled and instinctively wanted to shake his head to deny it, but in the last moment, he nodded again and explained, "Not long ago, I suddenly had a lot of memories, and there were ones involving my older brother." "Oh. Let's hear it." Wu Tian's mind turned rapidly and his heart turned horizontal. He said, "There is a Luo Luo in the west, and a Hongjun in the east. One demon and one path lead to the supremacy of heaven and earth." Luo Ting's face changed for the first time and he lost his composure, only hearing him constantly chewing on a name. Hongjun. Hongjun. Finally, Luo Ting smiled and said to Wu Tiandao, "You are very extraordinary." Because of the name Hongjun, it was also his first time hearing it, but as soon as he heard it, he understood who he was. Pangu Honghuang, with one yin and one yang, is the Tao, and they are the two extremes of yin and yang. Pangu is one, and they are two. As for three, Luo Ting looked up and looked into the distance. Wu Tian closed his mouth and didn't say much, while secretly wiping a cold sweat. It seemed that he had passed this level. As expected, when Luo Ting put away the black lotus, he released it. Wu Tian was free both physically and mentally, and quickly bowed in gratitude. Although bowing with his wings was somewhat comical, his fear of Luo Ting made him give up all the bottom line. "Are you afraid of me?" Wu Tian quickly shook his head and said, "It's not fear, it's awe, it's awe. Big brother is wise and powerful, and when I see him respect him, I look at him with fear." Wu Tian opened his mouth and said, "Sure enough, this flattery skill became more and more smooth as he practiced it. The premise is shameless. Fortunately, he is now a bird with a small bird face and full of bird hair. He does not have a fever or blush. Your name is Wu Tian, right?" Wu Tian hurriedly nodded. "Since you call me big brother, please follow me from now on." Wu Tian hesitated slightly. "What's wrong? You don't want to?" Luo Ting said unhappily. Wu Tian quickly shook his head. Luo Ting said lightly, "Not only did you eat one of my lotus seeds, but you also got a bit of my magic. If you don't want to, you have to repay me now." "Still. How come you still pay?" With a cold gaze from Luo Yen, Wu Tian fully understood. Wu Tian hurriedly said, "Yes, how could I not? Being able to follow Big Brother is my greatest blessing, and it will also be my lifelong pursuit." Luo Ting gave Wu Tian a faint glance and said, "Remember what you said." Wu Tian was aroused and quickly nodded. Gold New Book, Seeking Collection, Seeking Recommendation, Seeking Monthly Pass. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Eclipse Moon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Eclipse Moon. Luo Ting took a step, and Wu Tian followed. He didn't ask where they were going. His silence made Luo Yen take another look. The wind in the wilderness was strong, desolate, desolate, and desolate. At least wherever they walked, there were no signs of life activity. As night fell, Luo Ting stopped and Wu Tian fell behind him. You were very quiet all the way. I don't know why, but Luo Yan asked such a seemingly casual question. Wu Tianke didn't dare to be careless at all. He quickly replied with a smile, I'm afraid it might disturb Big Brother. Luo Ting's gently caressed fingers stopped, and the corner of his mouth hooked, saying, Don't you have anything to ask? Wu Tian was overjoyed and quickly said, You can ask anything. Luo Yan didn't answer the question, but turned around. I don't know if it's because of the dusk, but Luo Yan's eyebrows and eyes are no longer as captivating as during the day. Wu Tian boldly approached and said, Big Brother, what is your current state? As if he could see through Wu Tian's thoughts, Luo Yan replied lightly, You're still far behind. Wu Tian smiled awkwardly, at which point his advantage as a bird was reflected. If others couldn't see his face, he wouldn't be too embarrassed. Big Brother, when do you think I can transform? Luo Ting looked at Wu Tian like an idiot, meaning he had to ask someone when you would transform. Wu Tian continued to feel awkward. Luo Yan turned around and stopped talking to Wu Tian, this idiot. Wu Tian rubbed his wings and looked up at the sky. Idiots are better than intelligence. Tonight, the moon is bright and the stars are sparse. Wu Tian thought of the next sentence. The black magpie flies south. Around the tree for 3 turns, what branch can I rely on? How similar his situation is. Wu Tian suddenly felt a bit homesick. A faint sadness. At the moment when the moon disappeared, it disappeared completely clean. Wu Tianmu stared blankly as Luo Yan swallowed the moon. The world has fallen into darkness. A very familiar feeling. You read it wrong. It's Luo's voice. What? Wu Tian couldn't react. Luo Ting patiently explained 2 words. Eclipse moon. My divine ability. Luo Ting added 4 more words. Wu Tian let out a seemingly incomprehensible sigh. It wasn't until a long time later, when he saw Luo Yan's right eye turn into a black moon, that he truly understood the meaning of lunar eclipse. Wu Tian chose a location close to Luo Yan, but not too close, and began to practice with peace of mind. He didn't know that when he swallowed the vitality of heaven and earth, a black moon enveloped him. Wu Tiangong's movements were like a fish in water, and he quickly entered a beautiful state. Wu Tian opened his eyes again, not knowing which morning it was. The black-robed and black-haired Luo Ting stood in front, with his back to him, like a mountain, and he was in Luo Ting's shadow. At this moment, Wu Tian felt that they were very close and said, Big Brother, early morning. With a lazy taste, he spoke out. Upon reflection, Wu Tian let out a sigh of regret. He didn't know, but when Luo Ting heard this sound, Big Brother, good morning, his mouth curved. He is the demon ancestor, so what can escape his mind? Wu Tian flapped his wings and flew towards the sky, feeling that the sun was a bit dazzling. Your path is full of een. Luo Yan stepped forward, and Wu Tian followed suit. He asked again, what about Big Brother? Luo Yan smiled and looked up at the sun in the sky. The next moment, the sun disappeared, and Luo Ting said, this is called an eclipse. Watching Luo Yan swallow the sun in one gulp. Wu Tian was already shocked beyond shock. Luo Yan's way is too domineering. Do you want to learn? What? Wu Tian couldn't believe his ears. Eclipse the moon. Can we learn? Wu Tian stuttered. Only Luo Ting said lightly, there are innate and acquired powers, as well as differences in size. This time Wu Tian understood that both were lunar eclipse, and he could learn the postnatal small divine powers. Wu Tian hurriedly nodded and said, learn, I want to learn. Luo Ting's footsteps never stopped, and Wu Tianfei stepped forward, bringing their relationship closer. That night, they both practiced lunar eclipse, one innate and the other acquired. Big brother, where are we going? Go find a great wizard and order something. Sign the contract, everyone can rest assured to collect it. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. His Big Stick Falls. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 5. The Secret of Heavenly Demons. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. The Secret of Heavenly Demons. The sky is high and the clouds are light, and a man in a black robe like a waterfall is crouching a bird on his shoulder. The man's enchanted voice rang out, Pangu has not fallen long ago. In this world, there are traces of Pangu Avenue everywhere. You need to walk and see more. The black bird's eyes flashed with clarity and nodded, saying yes. He also understood why Luo Ting chose to go hiking. Thank you very much for your guidance, big brother. Wu Tian added another sentence. I only heard Luo Yen continue to say, one path falls, 10,000 paths are born. Now that all paths are sprouting, you must grasp them yourself. After speaking, Luo Ting stopped speaking. Wu Tian nodded and firmly remembered this sentence in his heart. He, Brother Luo, never talks nonsense, and once he speaks, it is absolutely reasonable. It can even be said that every word he says is a sermon from the demon ancestor. It is his understanding and perspective on this world. He is already the person standing at the highest point in this world. Big brother, do you have any methods to deduce the secrets of heaven? Tianji. I can see through it at a glance, why deduce? Luo Yen sneered. Wu Tian is speechless. Wu Tian looked up at Tian and lowered his voice, saying, what was that day? If the heavenly way does not emerge, the heavenly mechanism will not appear, said Luo Ting contemptuously in one sentence, the heavenly way is still clinging and dare not come out. Wu Tian opened his mouth but didn't say anything. Luo Yen gave Wu Tian a faint glance, as if he could see Wu Tian's fear of the heavenly way. He said, the heavenly way is just one thing, don't take it too high. This is the view of the demon ancestor on the heavenly way. Wu Tian nodded, still determined to ask, does Big Brother have any way to disrupt the heavenly way? This time it was Luo Ting's turn to be surprised. He didn't expect his usual cautious little brother to have such bold thoughts. Luo Ting laughed and burst out laughing. Luo Ting's heroic laughter shook Wu Tian 3 times. Big brother, why are you laughing? Wu Tian looked at Luo Ting anxiously, not knowing what he had said wrong. It's nothing, Luo Yen waved his hand and said, there is no way to disrupt the heavenly way yet, but we can give it a try in the future. Wu Tian didn't know how much trouble he had caused the heavenly Tao with just one sentence. What about blocking the heavenly way? Luo Yen shook his head and said, it's impossible unless you can block this day. Luo Yen glanced at Wu Tian and said, do you have any objections to the heavenly way? Wu Tian quickly shook his head and said, I dare not. Rather than blocking the heavenly way, it's better to block oneself, said Luo Yen. This was a change of angle, and Wu Tian's eyes lit up. Big brother, do you have a way? This is simple. Luo Ting casually passed a method to Wu Tian. Wu Tianru has obtained a precious treasure. Luo Yi shook his head. He often has some difficulty understanding his little brother. If he knew a word called tu in later generations, he would understand that this is a disease called middle tu, which has no cure. Wu Tian devoted a lot of time along the way to studying the method of shielding the heavenly machine given to him by Luo Yen. Seeing how serious he was, Luo Yen would occasionally give a few pointers and even make modifications to the Dharma. By the time they returned to the land of Moriofu, the Dharma had already changed its face and became a heavenly magic mystery. Even Luo Yen was very satisfied with the secret method he finally modified. During the process of modifying the secret method, Wu Tian naturally benefited the most. This is equivalent to him going from simple to complex, from shallow to deep, and under the guidance of a renowned teacher, he has conducted a profound analysis and understanding of the origin and development of blocking his own heavenly secrets. This famous teacher is the demon ancestor who can compete with the Taoist ancestor. Welcome everyone to join the investment team. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Treading on Dog Feet Luck. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Treading on Dog Feet Luck. Mo Luo Fu Di is surrounded by mountains, like lotus flowers, with a ridge spanning from east to west, like a one in a lotus flower. On top of a single mountain ridge, a peak stands out, stretching out the 5 sacred mountains to cover the city of Chicheng. Soaring straight into the clouds. Wu Tian was stunned by the sight. After a while, he spoke up and asked, "Big brother, which part of Pangu was this mountain transformed into?" Laryngeal bone. Wu Tian suddenly realized, then his eyes lit up and his thoughts diverged. So, when Pangu fell, his head was resting in the west and his feet were extended to the east. Since this is where his Adam's apple is, then his head. Wu Tian looked further west. Luo Ting's mind moved, as if something was in the direction indicated by Wu Tian's gaze. Before he could distinguish it clearly, he flashed by and couldn't catch it anymore. Luo Yen frowned and didn't say anything. Wu Tian continued to mutter to himself, with his head in the west and his feet in the east, "Where is his heart? I don't know if Pangu's heart grows on the left or right side. If it is on the right, then it is in the northeast direction of the Morua Mountains. There is another condition, Pangu needs to lie flat instead of lying on his side." Luo Ting kept listening quietly, because Wu Tian's words sounded absurd like a children's play, but it was a revelation of the Pangu wilderness. It is a dialysis that overlooks the world and the whole world. Right or not, I won't say it for now, but this overall perspective has given Luo Ting great inspiration. It can even be said that it broadened Luo Ting's horizons, elevating his gaze from a local perspective to a whole. Luo Ting's heart and mind were shaken, as if the sky was higher and the earth was wider, and he also saw more comprehensively. Luo Yen looked at Wu Tian with a strange expression in his eyes. But Wu Tianshi, who was completely open-minded and flying towards herself, did not notice it at all. "Big brother, do you think Pangu is lying flat or on his side?" Wu Tian turned his head to look at Luo Ting, his eyes lit up, his gaze burning with excitement. Luo Ting didn't answer the question directly. He smiled and said, "Look at my eyes. I saw Luo Yen with the sun in his left eye and the moon in his right eye. Lie flat." Wu Tian suddenly realized, when the sun rises in the east and the moon rises in the west, Pangu must be lying flat. Luo Ting did not say right or wrong, because after all, it was speculation and he had never seen Pangu. "Big brother, have you ever been to Mount Buzhou?" Wu Tian casually asked another question. "I haven't been there yet," Luo Ting said with a slight droop in his eyes, but he added, "I will go." Wu Tian nodded, and some of the passion in his head also subsided. Reason regained its high ground. "Big brother, are you going to shut down now?" Luo Ting nodded and said, "This seclusion is very important to me, it may take a long time." Wu Tian hurriedly said, "Big brother, rest assured to stay in seclusion. I'll leave it to my younger brother outside, and he'll be guarding it. I won't let anyone disturb Big brother." Wu Tian almost didn't pat his chest to ensure it. Luo Yen is very speechless. But he still said, "After I close down, you can walk around, but don't go too far. Although there are not many great supernatural powers, there are still some." Without further ado, Wu Tian understood that encountering it would be troublesome. Wu Tian nodded and said, "Little brother, remember. You can go and take a look." Luo Ting pointed to the mountain road. After finishing speaking, Luo Ting left. Wu Tian stood at the foot of the mountain, watching the main peak engulfed by darkness, knowing that his elder brother had closed down. Wu Tian stood for a while before regaining his senses, and he suddenly appeared in a moment of confusion. I don't know if it's a sigh of relief or a loss of reliance and palpitations. The sky is high, allowing birds to fly, but there must always be a refuge. Otherwise, it's not freedom, but confusion. Wu Tian poked his head and rose to himself. He is also sentimental. Wu Tian flapped his wings and flew into the sky, beginning his first free flight in life. Surrounding the main peak of Mo Luo, there is no flying far. Feeling the wind, overlooking the earth, carefree, he enjoys the joy of being a bird. At this moment, he truly relaxed. All troubles and worries have gone with the wind, becoming floating clouds on the horizon. Wu Tianlang didn't go home until midnight. The sky twinkled and shimmered with crystals. He is the only one when the crow returns home. The pitch-black rocks on the mountain lack even a tree, and there is no place to rest. We need to build a tree. This is Wu Tian's first practical idea after releasing himself. Mo Luo Fu Di is surrounded by mountains on all sides, gathering qi in all directions, but there is no grass growing. I don't know if it's due to the overwhelming power of Luo Yan's martial arts, which plundered the vitality of all things, or if Pangu, the throat of this land, has already lost its vitality. Wu Tian decided to give it a try tomorrow, provided that he first finds a tree or a seed. Wu Tian found a high rock and began to swallow it towards the bright moon. Internally exercise the qi method, and externally exhibit the lunar eclipse divine power. The vitality of the surrounding heaven and earth surged towards him, and a bright moon as big as a palm fell towards him in the sky. At the moment when Wu Tian swallowed the bright moon, the sky and earth darkened, limited to within 100 zhang radius of him. Wu Tian's breathing gradually became calm, somewhat elusive, and finally reached a balance between heaven and earth. After an unknown amount of time, when Wu Tian opened his eyes again, it was already daylight. Without Luo Yan covering him, when the sun comes out, he can no longer continue practicing qi. Wu Tian stretched his wings and stretched lazily, but in fact, he had no waist at all. Wu Tian glanced at the Mo Luo main peak shrouded in darkness, spread his wings and flew high, aiming southeast. He is going to find a tree to come back. To put it second, a seed is also good. But he felt that the latter was harder to find than the former. Because the goal is too small. Unless you step on dog poop luck. Wu Tian grumbled. But he's in the sky, how could it be? The originally clear sky suddenly changed color. In the blink of an eye, dark clouds had already formed. Continuing with lightning and thunder, it was terrifying that Wu Tian was forced to land. Then he stepped on the excrement of an unknown organism. Wu Tian leaned in and quickly moved away. Then rubbed vigorously on the ground. Wu Tian looked up at the sky, waiting for the rain to fall, hoping to use it to wash it away. But the sky was dry with thunder and no rain, and in the end, it cleared up. Wu Tianmu was stunned. He felt that he was not doing well as a whole. Wu Tian took a deep breath and started looking for the guy who defecated everywhere. But I couldn't find it. Wu Tian returned to the place where he stepped on the feces to look for any seeds or other things. No. Good but not good, bad. Wu Tian has some understanding of his divine power. Wu Tianzi smacked his lips and warned himself secretly that he should guard the door when speaking in the future, especially not casually roast about himself. Wu Tian shook his legs and decided to find a place to wash his feet first. Life is always full of variables. It seems that tonight is another night without branches to rely on. Wu Tianfei flew towards the sky and turned south, knowing where there was a river. After Wu Tian left, the excrement moved and a round spherical creature emerged. My little eyes are dripping and spinning around, very wise. It saw Wu Tian, but Wu Tian didn't see it. Because it hides well. Imagine, who would hide themselves in their own feces. This is a genius. Wu Tian returned from taking a shower and it was already dark. One night of meditation, on another hill. Anyway, there are many mountains around the Moriofuti and their recognition is not high. Wu Tian also followed suit. New book, Seeking Care, Seeking Favor. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Crow's Mouth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Crow's Mouth. Practice at night and travel during the day. For several days without any success. On this day, Wu Tian adjusted his direction and continued to search southeast, without changing the overall direction. At this time, the world is vast and green is rarely seen. In an era where innate spiritual roots never sprouted, where did the seeds come from? This is a question. After understanding this point, Wu Tian felt a bit discouraged. Unless you encounter someone like Zhu Mang. Wu Tian quickly closed his crow's mouth. Some words cannot be spoken recklessly. If you're not afraid of 10,000, just be afraid of the unexpected. What if we encounter it? Even though the era of Zhu Mang's birth is still early. Wu Tian's eyes were empty and he flew forward aimlessly, no longer holding on to hope. He plans to fly another distance, if not yet, he will take the road back to his home and never come out again. He decided to go back and focus on cultivation until his elder brother leaves the level. But things are often so wonderful, when he has no hope, a turning point appears. He unexpectedly saw an oasis. Wu Tian's first reaction was not a surprise, but a thrill. Wu Tian swallowed a mouthful of water and turned around to run. Do you want to be so scary, Ma? As Wu Tian turned his head, he heard a terrifying voice. Since you're here, why are you in a hurry to leave? Wu Tian's scalp tingled and he didn't respond, accelerating his pace. Flying tens of thousands of miles in one breath, Wu Tiankai dared to turn back when no sound was heard again. This turn almost scared his 3 souls and 6 souls. An old man was happily following behind him. The appearance of humanoid creatures at this time is absolutely terrifying and frightening. No matter how amiable his smile is, in Wu Tian's eyes, he is a terrifying monster that can eat people. Wu Tian felt his blood clotting under the old man's gaze. Invincible, unable to run. Wu Tian gritted his head and said, I don't know why the senior wants to follow the kid. The old man chuckled and said, since you don't want to go to my place, the same goes for me to go to your place. What do you mean when you go to my place? It's the same thing. Do I agree? Do I agree? But these words only made Wu Tian dare to shout in his heart. Wu Tian laughed and said, Senior, where are these words? I dare not trouble you, Senior. I will obey your orders. The old man raised his eyebrows and said, so, are you willing to visit me? Wu Tian gritted his head and nodded with a smile, yes, how could I not? It's a great honor for me to be a guest with the senior. Not forced. Not forced. The old man laughed like a fox. Wu Tian spoke with sincerity. So let's go then. Let's go. One person, one bird, one in front and one behind, return along the original path. I don't know what to call senior. Wu Tian began his probing. Since he couldn't escape and couldn't go back, he had to make another plan. No matter what decision he ultimately makes, he must start with understanding the great supernatural being in front of him. King Pan. The old man didn't seem to mind Wu Tian knowing his surname at all. Pan Wang. But Pan Gu's Pan. The old man nodded and said, not bad. With the affirmation of the old man, Wu Tian suddenly became less nervous. Although he has only heard of this name. As for his temper and temperament, he had no idea at all, but because of this one plate, he became calm. Wu Tian looked at the old man again and found that although his hair was gray, his qi and blood were extremely strong, giving people a feeling of grandeur. The old man seemed to have noticed a change in Wu Tian's mood, and a look of surprise flashed in his cloudy eyes. He doesn't know why this change happened. Is it just because of one word? Interesting. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Creator. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Creator. Wu Tian quickly followed the old man to the oasis area. A tree becomes a forest, and Wu Tian finally realized that the oasis he saw was actually a tree. The towering trees are truly frightening. There are many colorful insects moving under the giant tree. Wu Tian felt a chill. I dare not land while flying in the air. At this moment, his back became cold, and a silver snake hanging on the branch looked at him coldly. Wu Tian almost didn't explode. No disrespect. King Pan's voice became more serious, and the snake withdrew its gaze and lazily coiled up. Other toxins have also made way for space. The old man turned around and smiled at Wu Tian, saying, "The little ones are not sensible, let the kids laugh." Wu Tian dared to laugh and quickly said, "It's okay." The old man lightly pointed and a branch of the big tree reached out in front of Wu Tian. "This is very friendly." Wu Tian followed the flow of kindness and settled on the branches. The old man picked another leaf, and when the leaf was pushed out, there were many purple-black fruits on it. Mulberry. Wu Tian widened his eyes but remained silent. The old man smiled and said to Wu Tian, "There's nothing good to entertain the children. Just this green mulberry, and mulberries are still worth it. Let's have a try, young friends." Wu Tian looked up at the towering tree and asked, "But does this tree bear fruit?" The old man nodded. Wu Tian withdrew his gaze and looked at the green mulberry leaves in front of him, feeling somewhat suspicious. "It's not that I suspect there's a problem with this thing, but rather that I wonder why King Pan is so polite to him. As the saying goes, when etiquette is subordinate to others, there must be something to ask for. This is not considered as etiquette being subordinate to people, but there must be something to ask for." Wu Tian looked up at King Pan and said, "Senior, if you have anything to do, just give orders. How dare you use such a precious item, young man?" Pan Wang pointed at Wu Tian and said with a smile, "Little friend, that mouth is really powerful. What words come to little friend's mouth, always making people listen so comfortably?" Wu Tian chuckled and said, "Senior, I'm praising you falsely. I'm praising you falsely." Pan Wang moved his finger down and pointed at the mulberry in front of Wu Tian, saying, "Let's eat and say." 3 words, full of vitality. Wu Tian lowered his head and pecked one, then gave a big thumbs up. After taking one, Wu Tian naturally started taking the second, third. The smile deepened in King Pan's eyes. This young friend is indeed very interesting, careful and adaptable. Wu Tian was eating mulberries wholeheartedly, never lacking praise in his mouth. Originally, the green mulberry was very good, but he praised it 12 points. The old man listened happily and collected all the orders. Who doesn't like what sounds good? Until Wu Tian finished eating, the old man didn't speak up about anything serious. Watching Wu Tian eat the mulberries one by one into his stomach until the last one falls. The old man's eyes lit up, and he smiled and said, "I didn't expect you to have such a good appetite." If he had known that Wu Tian had eaten a black lotus seed since he was born, he wouldn't have said that. Wu Tian didn't know what the old man was referring to, but he smiled awkwardly, saying that the mulberries were really delicious. Pan Wang smiled and shook his head, saying, "Do you know why I invited you like this?" Wu Tian shook his head and said, "I was about to ask for advice." Pan Wang chuckled and pointed to the venomous creature crawling in the distance, saying, "What do you think of these little guys?" Wu Tian chuckled and said, "Very good, very good." King Pan didn't care if what Wu Tian said was true or not. He smiled and said, "I made it all up." "Did you make it?" Pan Wang nodded. He said again, "They are all mundane things that cannot become climate." The old man seems to have some regrets. Wu Tian dared not answer because he doesn't understand. King Pan said, "Do you know the truth that life originates from water?" Wu Tian nodded. King Pan said again, this is also referring to vulgar things that are not suitable for the climate. Truly extraordinary populations require creators to create, just like the Dragon Clan in the East China Sea and the Phoenix Clan in the South, both created by the ancestral dragons and phoenix ancestors, with different methods but common principles. And the main god of the Ganges, Vishnu. Upon hearing this name, Wu Tian's spirit was shaken. I only heard King Pan say, if it weren't for the recent severe injury he suffered, his plan to create gods would have been successful. However, even so, before falling asleep, he still separated Brahma and continued to create gods for him, because this is the mission of us first-generation great supernatural beings. King Pan pointed to himself and then to Wu Tian, saying, "We." Wu Tian blinked his eyes, "We." It took him a while to react. "Also, there's me." Wu Tian opened his mouth in shock. "Once you achieve your great powers, you will understand." King Pan said. "Since we have inherited the legacy of Pangu, this heaven and earth naturally have requirements for us. It should be noted that heaven and earth will not give us for free, and we cannot take it for free. I am so, you are so, and this tree is also so." The King Pan's eyes sparkled with wisdom that understood heaven and earth. Wu Tian nodded solemnly, but the next sentence was, "It seems like I'm still far away." He murmured in a low, babbling voice. Pan Wang chuckled in silence, but also understood the underlying meaning of Wu Tian's words. "I'm not in a hurry, and it's not related to me for the time being." The old man smiled and said, "You're not in a hurry, but I'm in a hurry." Wu Tian is speechless. Actually, he really wants to say, "What does that have to do with me?" But he dare not. "You're not being kind, little friend. Don't forget that you just ate my mulberries." Wu Tian was speechless again. A slanderous remark. This old man is too realistic. "Do you know why all these little things I've created are just common things?" said King Pan, changing his tone. Wu Tian shook his head. How could he know? Pan Wang said, "I used to feel like something was missing, but I couldn't explain exactly what was missing until I saw my friend and suddenly realized." Wu Tian suddenly had a creepy feeling because old Pan Wang's gaze at him was too naked. Wu Tian was so frightened by the sight that he burst out laughing. Earth, fire, wind, and water, earth, fire and feng shui. The Dragon Clan was born from the water, the Phoenix Clan was born from the fire, and there was also the Qilin, who got the land. So did Vishnu, who got the water, and little friend. King Pan's gaze became even hotter. You, what are you doing?" Seeing Wu Nizhan being provoked, Pan Wang restrained slightly and said, "Don't be so nervous, little friend. Although you are a congenital wind spirit, there are many wind spirits in this world." This time it was Wu Tian's turn to be surprised. "How do you say that?" Pan Wang stroked his beard and said, "The wind is very different from the earth's fire and water. The wind is easy to disperse and difficult to gather, so the earth's fire and water at the beginning of heaven and earth each form a big trend, except for the wind, which is scattered throughout the world. Therefore, little friend, not only is your road difficult, but your enemies are also vast. You must be prepared." King Pan even blinked at Wu Tian as he spoke, without any concealment of his schadenfreude. Wu Tianwen breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing these words. He is not afraid of the difficulties of any great path, let alone the vast enemy of any great path. After all, this is all for the future. He is most afraid of hearing that he is a lonely person at this moment, and that disaster will come, and the disaster is right in front of him. Seemingly sensing Wu Tian's thoughts, Pan Wang smiled and gave a thumbs up. "Little friend, you have great wisdom. My name is Wu Tian. Senior, just call me by name." The old man chuckled and said, "Then don't call me senior. If you don't mind, call me brother." Wu Tian chuckled and said, "That kid is not polite. Brother Pan Wang." Wu Tianshi called out, "Brother Wu Tian." The two of them looked at each other and smiled, laying the foundation for cooperation. What does the elder brother need the younger brother to do? Just speak up. Wu Tian's heroic spirit dries up in the clouds. Just wait for my brother's words. King Pan is not polite either. The first time I would like to express my gratitude at the beginning of the book. A fleeting and dreamy life with 9 thoughts, helmsman, a clever and reasonable chubby, steward, a mountain with wood and flowing clouds, disciple, a solitary traveler with 1,000 shadows, greedy 123, swimming through the chaotic sea of stars, not reciting non-words, forgetting all the books in the world, Zhuge Qianchang, Felix Zhang 12, thinking of old friends in the mountains and rivers, assistant, always listening to hell, only I live the same life as heaven, 3 clear and 4. Imperial, wind and frost and rain and snow, miscellaneous cultivators, Zhongli cold night, Yang Maoenyobi, Guang Long Sanren, Qi Xingling, Ai Ling, Ren. The wind in the heart, there is only one nightmare. Magical fishing, starry fairy, S treasure boy, book friend 202012192233522813, lazy cat in the corner of the tavern, book friend 202005301637424459, Yin and Yang fork meeting waste, Qiankuan big move fish, 1 dreamless idle fish 12138, QL91, and then, the wind sings ice and snow frost, bags 1230, ink marks, Bulla Sparta, Einstein gives plank. WEF, I eats candy, pecks mud chun yen, chi chin yen, double, alpha iota gamma kappa epsilon rho omega at 0559 during the day, Lin Matsuan, the wind was strange. Suddenly, Fipian, the cat gazing down at the sky, Fanguen, Lu Lin, Hongmeng had emotions. I wanted to vomit blood, and the slender origami kite received 58 big rewards and support. At the same time, I would like to thank everyone for their great investment, monthly tickets, and recommended support. New book seedlings, please take good care of them, provide guidance and support, thank you very much. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Creation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Creation. Wu Tiangan smiled. I said you're not polite, you're really not polite. Actually, he is still nervous in his heart. Some things are said to be one thing, but done is another thing. The reason why he spoke so grandly was because the bird had to bow its head under the big tree. Rather than being forced, it's better to take the initiative and leave room for maneuver. His mind is not complicated, but very flexible. In the eyes of King Pan, he is just a clever little ghost and not annoying. On the contrary, it is also very pleasing. It is precisely because of this that King Pan is willing to praise Wu Tian and call him brother. Of course, the fundamental reason is still that he needs Wu Tian. Pan Wang said, actually, it's not complicated to say. I want my brother to endow me with the flying ability of the creature wind attribute I created. How to do it? Wu Tian didn't procrastinate either. Pan Wang thought for a moment and said, the main task is still for me to do. Brother, all you need to do is to be responsible for attaching spirits. But after all, we are two people, and there are differences in all aspects. It may not be overnight to achieve perfect integration. Wu Tian nodded and said, I understand. Old Pan Wang reached out his hand, intending to pat Wu Tian's shoulder, but realizing that his little brother was still a bird, he awkwardly withdrew his hand. But his eyes still conveyed his gratitude. Before that, I need to tell you my way, which is also my guide. Wu Tian nodded. After King Pan finished speaking, Wu Tian suddenly realized. Originally, King Pan was practicing in the 6 Panshan mountains where Pangu Panchang had transformed. His true form was a gu, or ancestral insect. Hard and toxic. So, this is not my brother's dojo. No, my elder brother's dojo is located in the southeast of the west and the southwest of the east, where there are 100,000 mountains. I also encountered you here because of my failed creation and had no clue for a moment. I came out to relax and find a solution while feeling frustrated. Speaking of this, old Pan Wang looked proud. Wu Tianxiang couldn't bear to roll his eyes. Wu Tian spoke up and said, I believe my followers are all aware of it, but there is one thing. I like yin and dislike yang on the main road, and I hope it won't have any impact. Old Pan Wang patted his thigh and said, Hey, you truly are the destined brother of my Pan Wang, and I am the same. Wu Tianzhong couldn't help but roll his eyes. King Pan laughed heartily. Wu Tian couldn't help but say, all right, let's do whatever we say and don't waste time. Upon hearing this, King Pan's gaze at Wu Tian turned green, much like Wang Ba's gaze at Green Bean. After a while, he spat out a sentence and said, I didn't expect that my younger brother is also an impatient person, and so is my older brother. There is a strong sense of mutual hatred towards meeting too late. Wu Tian was directly taken out of his temper. Then let's get started, said old Pan Wang, changing his tone with this remark. The old man's expression changed from absurd to serious. Starting from this day, Wu Tian joined the creation plan of King Pan. Mainly, King Pan used his own bloodline as a guide, supplemented by the means of creation to refine and transform Gu. In this process, Wu Tian needed to inject the spirit of wind, using spiritual energy as a carrier and ideas as spiritual roots. In the words of King Pan, it means possessing spirits. The great supernatural powers create things, transport the energy of heaven and earth, transform the life and death of creation, refine souls, and finally give wisdom and life. It is not simpler than giving birth to a child. After all, what two people need to do now is done by one person, who is both a father and a mother, and also asexual reproduction. It is not only necessary to ensure that the breed is excellent, but also to ensure that the future is bright and flawless. Wu Tian is looking at one head and two big ones. It's too exhausting. The key is that he can't understand, and after reading for a long time, he still has a headache. The old man Pan Wang, who devoted himself to the plan of creating a human, wore a head of messy hair, his eyes were focused and frightening, and his 4 golden pupils emitted a sacred and inviolable divine radiance, making people dare not look directly at him. This is a manifestation of high concentration of the mind. That's right, the old man has double pupils at this time. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Wind Gu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Wind Gu. In spring and autumn, there are several degrees, with cold and summer coming and going. On this day, there was a natural anomaly, with evil clouds rolling and evil winds roaring. The newly created spirit of the wind by King Pan has been recognized by heaven and earth, giving birth to divine radiance. Or more precisely, they should be called magic obstacles, because their divine radiance is black. Not good, greatly not good. Meanwhile, both Wu Tian and King Pan entered a wonderful realm of enlightenment. Realizing the origin of life and the magic of creation, of course, Wu Tian was just entering this realm for the first time. However, even so, the truth that he couldn't see or understand before suddenly came to light, like plucking clouds to see the sun, seeing heaven and earth, and seeing sentient beings, which is a great joy. At this moment, they are all moved, for this heaven and earth, for this life. Pay respects to our ancestors, pay respects to our second ancestors, pay respects to our ancestors, pay respects to our second ancestors. Wu Tian opened his eyes and saw hundreds of different colored insects shaking transparent cicada wings, cheering and dancing around him and King Pan. The first 10-winged cicada is the most dazzling. Born to be able to speak, born to be able to fly, are undoubtedly extraordinary. As for other abilities, they are also different. The 9 sons of the dragon have their own strengths. The creation of the Creator is definitely not replication. Every birth of life also has inheritance and breakthrough, or mutation. King Pan was so happy that his eyes couldn't even find him. The road is advancing, and we have our own race. He is also someone who can be revered as his ancestor. From now on, I will be worshipped by a family and enjoy the fortune of a family. Heaven and earth are famous, the ancestor of King Pan. As for Wu Tian, he played a borderline game with no real name. Of course, I also shared some luck. Wu Tian bowed and congratulated King Pan. King Pan laughed heartily and said, "Same joy, same joy." At this moment, King Pan was in a good mood. He smiled and asked Wu Tian, "Brother, what would you call our tribe?" What a "we," just 2 words circled him in. His old brother is also very good at speaking. Wu Tian chuckled and said, "It's my family, my family. As for what name should I choose? You have to decide for yourself, my brother. He can't be too impolite when others are polite to him, that would be too immature." Pan Wang nodded at Wu Tiandao with his finger and said, "You're still seeing things outside of me like this." Wu Tian smiled and said, "This is not an outsider. I really have to do this on my own. I really can't help you." Seeing Wu Tian's resolute attitude, King Pan no longer persisted. He pondered for a while and said, "Do you think it's good to call yourself the Wind Gu clan? Isn't that appropriate? I think it's better to call it the Gu clan." Old Pan Wang tilted his eyes and stared at Wu Tiandao. "Just now I asked you, you asked me to take it. Now that I have taken it, do you have any objections?" King Pan waved his hand and said, "Let's call it the Wind Gu clan. That's it." Wu Tian couldn't help but smile bitterly. What else could he say? He finally realized that his brother's eloquence was not inferior to his. Is it really fate predetermined? When does the old man plan to leave? King Pan said, "In the next few days, I need to go back and settle these little guys down." Wu Tian nodded and said, "I've been out long enough, so I need to hurry back." King Pan apologized and said, "It's all because of my brother." Wu Tian hurriedly interrupted, "There's no need to mention the past, after all, we weren't familiar at that time." King Pan chuckled and said, "That's the truth." He reached out to take a picture of Wu Tian again, but couldn't find the place to start, so he withdrew his hand in a casual manner. "Brother, you need to transform quickly." This statement was quite resentful. Wu Tian nodded with a bitter smile and said, "I will. Do you want to bring some back?" Pan Wang pointed to the Wind Gu flying in the air. Wu Tian shook his head and said, "I don't understand Gu Dao. It's more beneficial for them to grow up by following my brother." Pan Wang nodded, but then said, "I can't let you work in vain, brother. How about brother pass on a technique?" Wu Tian, who was about to speak, closed his mouth. "I heard old Pan Wang say, I have a curse technique that suits me very well. What do I think?" Wu Tian rolled his eyes. How did he see that the curse spell was suitable for him? What? No. Yes. Old Pan Wang laughed heartily. That night, after old Pan Wang passed the curse spell, the two of them chatted overnight. King Pan learned that Wu Tian came out this time to find a tree. Old Pan Wang also gave Wu Tian a tree species, which is the seed of the green mulberry tree. As he bid farewell, old Pan Wang repeatedly reminded Wu Tian, "Be sure to go to the 100,000 mountains to find him." Wu Tian nodded and agreed. From beginning to end, Wu Tian never mentioned Luo Gui and Mo Luo Fudi to King Pan. Because this is not a personal matter. King Pan didn't ask much either. King Pan watched as Wu Tian left and turned around to collect the various poisonous insects. The oasis disappeared, and the old man had an extra green mulberry cane in his hand. The old man held the cane and headed southeast. He not only completed his mission this time, but also met an interesting little brother. "This trip is not worth it, it's not worth it." The old man stepped on the dawn, his face covered in spring sunshine. New books, Seeking Care. End of this chapter.